the eyes of the world are watching what's taking place in California today. Among the people here to join you is a man who walked with Martin Luther King. Is a man who spent years in jail for his convictions. Is a man who taught nonviolent strategies of civil disobedience to the people who sat on the lunch counters during the 1950s and 60s and who marched in the civil rights movement. This man is with us today, and he's with us this entire year. Please join me in welcoming the Reverend James Lawson, Jr.
Well, it is true that from 1955 and to 1968, I was a colleague of Martin Luther King Jr. in Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, and all across the southeastern part of the country as we were trying to create and build a movement for social justice and for equality and the like. But it's equally true that I'm more than delighted to be at CSUN this afternoon and participate in this day of action on March 2nd, 2011. I count it just as much a privilege and an honor to be here with you, another generation of students, as I felt and feel that my years with Martin King were so profound and astonishing. I should also tell you that I've had the great privilege of marching with people like Cesar Chavez here in Los Angeles area in the 60s and 70s, and with Dolores Huerta, who at 82 or 83 years of age is continuing to organize and to work for social justice. And I count as one of my finest colleagues since 1974 when I came to Los Angeles, one of my finest colleagues and one of the outstanding human beings in our country is Maria Elena Durazo, who is the Secretary Treasury now of the Labor Council, but one of the great organizers of Local 11 Unite, becoming president of that local organization when she was 23 years of age and fresh out of college, but wanting to commit herself to labor and to truth and justice. So it's a great, great thing for me to be with you and to be here and to see the many, many different connections between then and now. I should also say to you that don't take any stuff and nonsense about this student generation being apathetic or indifferent. In 1947 to 1952, in my college days in Ohio, we never had a rally like this on any issue on my campuses. In fact, my generation really did not get out there and go to work on some of the issues that needed to be attended to then. In fact, if my generation had been more dynamic and more actively engaged in the issues of sexism and racism and violence and greed and access to opportunity for all the people of our land, then your task in the 21st century would not be as perplexing and difficult as it is today. So you are way ahead of my own generation, even though I was activist in so many different ways and went to prison out of college in refusing to go by the draft, the conscription act at that day that all of us had to register for. But you need to congratulate yourself that you're here, and I want to say you need to congratulate yourself for another reason, and that is because of the signs that you're carrying that indicate that you have concerns for a broad spectrum of human need and human rights. That's important. That's what Governor Brown and the legislature and the Congress and the White House do not have. a concern for the broad area of 310 million people in this country, all of whom want indeed a better life, and all of whom want our society to serve truth and justice and human dignity and human rights more than anything else in the world. So you're again at an advantaged place in your society and in your world. And I want simply then finally to commend you for today's actions and activity, because it is important that every body of people in our society refuse the Fox entertainment news, propaganda news position that you are powerless, that you don't have ability or understanding or intelligence. That is being imposed upon us from the Chamber of Commerce to this Fox entertainment system and across this nation, even in our governmental bodies. They want us to believe that our only power is to power the vote. But that's not our major power. Our major power is the gift of the Creator that we have of life, and the power that life itself has if we want to use life in the fullness of what that potential is. And so I'm pleased to be here. Education is a human right. You need to understand that. We are the only living species that we know anything about that has a central nervous system and a brain, and that has learned to read and think and sing, and dance and play, and join together with other people across a great many kinds of fronts and needs. That means, among other things, that not only did the Creator create, but the Creator also gave us certain inalienable rights, and one of these rights is the right to cultivate our mind and our brain to the fullest possibility that is available to us. You need to believe as never before that you are in school not because you can get a better job afterwards, because some people are not going to get better jobs and have never gotten better jobs simply because they had a college degree. You need to think of the fact that you are in getting and trying to achieve an education in order to teach and learn, to teach yourself and to learn all your days for the multiplicity of roles that we human beings are called upon to play across a decade or 3 decades, or in my case, across 8 decades of life. You have to equip yourself for that. And a college education, it seems to me, is critical for us becoming effective, competent human beings who have many roles, not only the role as male and female, but not only the role as husband and wife, not only the role as sisters and brothers, but the roles as parents, the roles of being uncles and aunts to children, the role of trying to be a generation that will nurture the oncoming babies and children and young people so that they have more access than what we had all along the way. So you have roles to play, and you cannot do that if you're illiterate. You cannot do that very well if you do not have some understanding of yourself and your world and of the humans of this world. You have been born, created, birthed to be a human being more than anything else. And you must not give up the power of human life to an institution of any kind. I don't care what that institution is or what it says. Society, nations, schools, universities are supposed to be here primarily to serve the needs and the potential of our being human and becoming more human than we've ever imagined was possible for any of us. That's the role of society and governments and institutions. It has no other, they have no other major purpose to try to serve the current generations and the aspirations to be all that life has afforded us to be. Human education, therefore, is a human right. But what's going on now in the United States and in California specifically is that plantation capitalism has determined that we do not need education for human competency and human living. They want education primarily to create people who will be the nuts and bolts of an economy where people are property and consumers and people are not people or persons, where profits take the place of any other kind of form of growth or achievement that we humans are capable of doing. You have to understand that when the Democratic Party and the Republican Party joined that Chamber of Commerce pursuit to reduce education and schooling and universities to being marginalized in the life of the human race and in the life of our nation, they are doing us a disservice. And it's not just this present governor and legislature, but they have really no vision of who you are, of what you're about, and therefore their responsibility to you and to your parents and grandparents and to all of us who are part of our state. Martin Luther King Jr. said on April the 4th, 1967, that when a nation is spending more for war and military purposes than it's spending for its social programs, it is already moving into moral and spiritual and social bankruptcy and death. There's no justification for the argument that we do not have money. We have money. It's only if the governor and the legislature will have the insight and the courage to put the agenda of money on the table and talk realistically about it and lead this state in understanding that we do have money. You know, I can give you one solution very, very fast that the President and Congress could do. They could end the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and bring those hundreds of billions of dollars that are being spent today for war in those two countries. They could stop the wars and bring all that money back to the United States, or keep the money in the United States and use it entirely for your education and for the education of all the young people, the children and young people of our nation. And education not only through public schools, but education to higher education, well, education into all sorts of careers and opportunities for service that we the people need today. The problem is not money. The problem is vision. The problem is courage. And the problem is the kind of human character that's willing to put first things first, rather than at the bottom of the bucket in terms of what they're doing and what they're saying. Your task, and others have said this already before me in this march today, is to make this march this one single demonstration of your commitment to a different kind of future for yourself and for all of our nation. The truth of the matter is we can have a better CSUN, we can have a better Northridge, we can have a better Los Angeles, we can have a better nation. The visions that are being pushed on us are not the visions of truth or the visions of beauty and wonder. They are false, felonious visions that will not count and will not prevail. They may take us down a long, dark, terrible road of this catastrophe and chaos. But you cannot build a peaceful society out of violence and war. You cannot build a community of people who are learned out of neglecting education and many different models of education and learning. You cannot build a society of justice while pretending that issues like racism and sexism are not really a part of the public discussion. You cannot build a better society while pretending that violence is the only way, and that nonviolence has not happened even in America, and that nonviolence is not a creative option out of the 20th century that we in the 21st century must learn. So I say to you, we're marching for many, many different reasons. I'm pleased to be able to march with you.
And I say to you, let this not be just the only thing that happens today or the only thing that happens tomorrow. But let this March the 2nd day of action be a day that triggers all of us, each of us and all of us, into being committed with our very lives to the kind of future that I think history offers, that God offers, and that you want. Thank you.
Keep it going, y'all.